I'm Jordan Poole from the University of Michigan Basketball. You are watching TR Sports. Please enjoy.
Hello, everybody. And you all know what you're watching. This is episode 9 of TR Sports. I'm your host, Toby. And what a week to close the fall-winter sporting season. This was the final week of the actual seasons of leagues that we've been watching since this fall. And, of course, we had the conclusion of the NBA Finals, the conclusion of the Stanley Cup, and we have the NBA Draft coming up. So here's our lineup for today. First, we're going to talk about some little stories that we're going to talk about those stories like the Stanley Cup that I don't know too much about, but I want to talk about. So we'll do that. So that's why it's not up on the bar. Next, we're going to talk about the NBA Finals and the epic conclusion in that pretty good 6-game series, which it turned out to be. We're going to be talking about KD, how I think his injury will affect his free agency. And last week we talked about where I think he's going to go in free agency. And I've changed my opinion on that since the injury. But then we will kind of be talking about an ESPN special / my opinion, talking about other football leagues like the XFL and the AAF and talking about how I think they'll do and why they fail. And it's just a cool story I want to talk about. And then the big one, I will be showing my top 10 picks, and I'll be doing a mock of all 10 of those picks on the podcast for the draft that's coming up this Thursday. So, let's get into our first story, the NBA Finals. And I said the Raptors were done. And for a second there, I thought, I made another wrong prediction in this playoffs. Not the best job I've ever done at predicting stuff this playoffs for me. But I ended up being right. I said, originally I said the Warriors would win the series. But then I had my first, and then I shifted my opinion. Even though my prediction, official one, was still the Warriors. I said that the Raptors were going to win it after taking a 3-1 lead. And that's what they did. And honestly, this Warriors team put up a fight. They did better than I thought they would. They won a game. They lost the next one. But they didn't give up. Of course, injuries hurt them. Kevin Durant going down again after coming back with an injury and a very injured Achilles. Of course, that hurt them. But, they showed a lot of fight. They showed that as a team, they have the potential to come back from 3-1. And I think it was very possible. And I'm sad. Not just because I was rooting for the Warriors, because the Raptors beat my favorite team, the Sixers. I also really wanted to see a Game 7. And a Game 7 in this series would be so awesome, so great. I would love to watch that, but that did not happen as Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet put on a performance. A couple podcasts ago, I said Kyle Lowry was a pest and not good in the playoffs. The first one is still right. But he proved me wrong in the second one. His whole career, he's shown that he's bad in the playoffs. In the start of the playoffs, he showed that he was bad. But in this finals, he has showed that he can step up and play in those big moments. 26 points in Game 6 to win the series. That is a stat line. Fred VanVleet had a great game in the fourth quarter, dropping, I think, 10 points in a certain quarter. And then he had 22 in total. He started out slow in the playoffs once again, sped up, and really had a great finals. So good for him. I thought he could maybe be finals MVP. That is not what happened. Marc Gasol, not a great series, not a great game, but hey, he's an NBA champion. That's all that matters, and he didn't have as big of an impact on the team as I thought he would, but it clearly worked out for the Raptors. Kawhi Leonard. He had a crazy series, won Finals MVP. He should be crazy proud of himself. He's a great, great player. Top 5 in the NBA. But let's slow down the hype train just a little on Kawhi. He didn't have a crazy, crazy great NBA Finals series. That's not what happened. He underperformed, personally, I think. And the reason he has Finals MVP is because of what he did throughout the playoffs. But he's not the best player in the NBA. He's not, okay? He's had a great career, and he's, as I said, top 5. You could even argue number 2 NBA player in the world, but he's not number 1. So I think people have to. I heard someone. I was at a Phillies game a couple days ago, and someone behind me said, "You know what, Kawhi Leonard, man, he should have won MVP this year because he played defense and all that because he plays on both sides of the court," is what this guy said. And I'm thinking to myself, what a terrible take this is. You're living in the moment. But Kawhi Leonard missed so many games during the regular season. Not only that, but he wasn't even the best player defensively during the regular season. Kawhi Leonard was not as good defensively as Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's what happened this season. Maybe in the playoffs, yeah, Kawhi Leonard was better and stepped up. But we're not talking about the playoffs. Yes, Kawhi can defend, but that doesn't mean he should be MVP. Just because a player has a good playoff run doesn't mean he's regular season MVP. And this happens every year. Every year, people are talking about the MVP, and then it comes to the playoffs, and they change their mind. It is a regular season award, and that's why, personally, I believe the award show should be before the playoffs. Because players like last year, James Harden, get trash talk for having a bad performance. Same thing for Giannis. Kawhi Leonard is not the best player in the world, and he's not the MVP. But he is the MVP of the finals, and he had a great playoff run in him. Good for this Raptors team. Good for the fans. They clearly wanted it, even though I did not want them to have it. Electric fan base. And, Steph Curry had a shot for the Warriors to win the game in Game 6 at the very end. However, he did miss the three. They set a screen, a Brad Stevens play, something that Brad Stevens would run. So Steve Kerr tried that out. Ran a screen for Curry. Curry missed it. And in the end, Curry choked, and then the ball fell out, and then Draymond Green, if I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Draymond Green picked up the ball, called a timeout, technical was called, makes technical, makes two more, and then it's 4-point lead. So Curry, so the game was over at that point. But great series, great teams, great battle. It's weird to see another team that's not called the Warriors win the finals. Even though it's not the outcome I wanted, I'll take it. It's still a good outcome. And there's plenty to come in this NBA offseason. And speaking of the NBA offseason, Kevin Durant's a free agent this year. So that's why next we will be talking about how Kevin Durant's Achilles injury affects him during free agency, and if the Warriors were right to put him out on the court. Welcome back to TR Sports. It is now time to talk about Kevin Durant. So I made a TR Clips, my first TR Clips episode, which is just basically me talking about stuff that you can't really talk about on the podcast, and I made it about Kevin Durant and his return and how I thought it would affect the team, and I thought the Warriors might have a chance with KD coming back, and I got a copyright label on that video, not a strike, but it was a warning, and they're going to play ads on that video. That's what happened to me. What happened to the Warriors is a similar case. The Warriors put out this new, fresh star. Maybe they were not too careful like I was picking the clips for that video that got copyrighted. The Warriors and me were both not careful of what we put out. They put out Kevin Durant, who was still injured, who was still not 100% and not ready to come back. While I put out carelessly film that I probably should have known that would have gotten a copyright. So that's my comparison for this situation. Kevin Durant was not ready. I don't think he was. I think they rushed him out there. I think the staff was probably put under pressure by the organization, even though I don't have any insider information, but this happens quite often. I'm pretty in the business, a lot of times these staffs are pressured to say a player is ready, and the players pressuring themselves to go back on the court, and sometimes a group decision isn't necessarily the best thing, and sometimes you need an outsider opinion. I don't know if they got an outsider opinion, but I doubt it. Because he wasn't ready. I mean, he played so many minutes. He played like 14 minutes out of 20, which is too much for a guy who comes off after a big injury like that. And the Warriors paid the price. Bob Myers, the GM of the Warriors, was crying after the game because Kevin Durant ruptured his Achilles. That is a bad injury that's going to sideline him for probably a lot of next year. So, with Kevin Durant now being injured, it changes so many teams' situation, and I'm not going to do another Kevin Durant free agency prediction segment, but I'm going to change my number one prediction with this new information. I think Kevin Durant's going to stay with the Warriors. I don't think he's going to go to the Knicks. I don't think he wants to change training staffs. I don't think the Knicks will be able to handle Kevin Durant. So, my prediction is that he's going to stay with the Warriors. And why did I switch it from the Nets? I said he would go to the Nets. Kyrie Irving's going to the Nets. I don't think that they will be able to get Kyrie, Durant, and D'Angelo. I don't think they would be able to play together, and I don't think they're going to pull it off. So it's been almost confirmed by a lot of sources. It's just a rumor. I'm not saying anything. I'm not confirming anything. But apparently Kyrie Irving's going to go to the Brooklyn Nets. And if that is the case, then I don't think Kevin Durant's going to go there. And I think he wants the same training staff. And I think he wants to have some comfort while trying to return from this injury. The question is, did this injury cost the Warriors the NBA Finals? I would like to say so. I thought the Warriors had a legit shot to win with Kevin Durant coming back, and I feel like the injury to Kevin Durant really messed up the Warriors' chances. And not only that, but Klay Thompson might have torn his ACL. I don't know if there's an official report out about that. But, I mean, of course, I've heard it all over the radio and news. The Warriors, throughout their run, benefited from injuries. And now the Raptors got a chance to benefit from injuries of Klay Thompson and his ACL and Kevin Durant. So, we'll see. I'm pretty sure Kevin Durant's going to stay with the Warriors. So the Warriors are going to be a powerhouse either way next season, so I wouldn't be too worried if I'm a Warriors fan. But this is going to be big for KD himself. Definitely going to impact his free agency. So we'll see what happens to him, and we'll see if he comes back 100%, because I'm not sure. I'm a little skeptical, especially because of his build. It's not like he's a huge guy. But we'll see what happens when he comes back, and probably about a year from now, he'll be in playing form again. So when we come back on the podcast, we'll be talking about the AAF and the XFL and why both leagues originally failed. And we'll be talking about an ESPN article. We're just going to be talking about football. I want to talk about football. That's why the story is in here on TR Sports. We'll be right back. Welcome back to TR Sports. It is now time to talk about football once again, but not the NFL. It's the first special story we're going to do on this podcast, so we're going to try it out, see how it goes. So, I read some of this article, not all of it, because it's a really long article from ESPN, talking about the XFL and the AAF. Talking about spring football and all that stuff, and we're going to talk about that here on the podcast. That's what inspired me to talk about the dangers of spring football and trying to start a business in that. But also, it's a great written article, and I'll probably leave a link in the description for you guys to go look at that, because really well said, really well put. So, let's start with the XFL. The idea of the XFL was first born in the early 2000s, where Vince McMahon really, really wanted to start a football league. And, he saw leagues fail in the spring before it, which we'll talk about later. But he really wanted to create a new NFL. And he wanted to create a WWE version of the NFL where it's all flashy, over sexual, over everything. It's an over-the-top league of football with the worst talent. And, it was a failure. It was a big failure. No one really loved it. No one really thought it was great. It only lasted 1 year. And the most famous moment is a guy who wrote, "He hate me" on the back of his jersey. That's it. That's what the XFL is remembered for. I could ask all the viewers that have listened to all of the episodes of the podcast. I bet none of them would be able to answer the question, who won the XFL championship the first year it came? No one. I don't even know that off the top of my head. So later in 2016, as the article goes on to read, Vince McMahon had the idea to bring the XFL back, and he announced it about a year ago it's like a year and a half ago, he announced the return of the XFL, which will be in 2020. So next spring, the XFL will try to be a new football league. And it's going for more of not a developmental league, not a complete rival to the NFL. And I was watching a podcast about the XFL and Strong Opinion Sports, great podcast, said, the guy who runs the podcast said, they're going to go for more of an MLS style. They're going to not try to compete with the Premier League because the MLS cannot do that, right? The MLS is just an American league that takes players that aren't good enough to go to the Premier League, which is the best league in soccer. They take them, or they take up washed-up old guys. That's what the XFL is going to be, except the Premier League is the NFL in this case, and the MLS is the XFL. So that's a great analysis from Strong Opinion Sports. So the XFL, I feel like, has a real shot coming back in 2020. I feel like it'll be last at least a couple years, at the least 3. I feel like people are hungry for spring football. I thought the AAF was going to work, however, it did not. So that's the XFL. We'll see how that runs, but the dysfunction of the AAF is also a football league that came down this year. So this fall, a bunch of guys with money, a lot of football minds, decided to start their own football league called the AAF this year. It lasted for like 7 weeks, and then it failed. They did not have the funding. And the issue with this league is they tried to act as a developmental league for the NFL, which, number one, doesn't work. You can't really have a minor leagues or G League in the NFL. I don't think it'll ever work. The NFL didn't give them funding, which just to me doesn't make any sense. And they didn't have enough money from the get-go. Those are some of the reasons it failed. And they didn't even complete the season. I thought you look at the XFL, you're like, that's a failure. The old XFL is a failure. And then you look at the AAF and you're like, ooh, that's a real failure. Just everything in the AAF was mismarketed, misused, and there's so much dysfunction, as the ESPN article says. And someone had to put a bunch of money. The owner of the Hurricanes, which is a team in the NHL, decided to buy a bunch of the AAF and try to run it, but he ultimately failed because they were not able to reach payroll. The AAF is gone, and I'm sad about that because I really wanted to see 2 successful football leagues, and we didn't get to see that. And of course that's the case, but I also love the idea of the XFL playing the AAF for their championship game, which of course will not happen because the AAF doesn't exist anymore. So the whole point of this story, the whole point of me talking about these spring football leagues, is to inform you guys about these cool stories, about these cool side things about football, side leagues. But it's also to say, I don't think spring football really works, and I don't think the XFL is going to last more than 15 years. I just don't think it's something that can really work, and I feel like the NFL really has a grasp on that market there. It's kind of like creating a new NBA. You cannot do that. There's no league that's ever going to compete with the NBA. It's just not going to happen. So I don't think the XFL will be particularly successful. I feel like it'll be fun for a couple of years, but ultimately fall off. So that is our special story, talking about these football leagues, and talking about the dangers of spring football and why leagues, as I said, like the USFL, which was a league in the 80s, which had a great start, ultimately failed. That's for other reasons too. Maybe we'll talk about that at a later podcast, maybe even next week. But yeah, so those are the spring football leagues. But when we come back, we have the big story. The NBA draft. What am I saying? The NBA draft is our next story, and it's going to be, we're going to do our mock draft, top 10 picks. So that's going to take up a lot of time in the podcast. So we'll be right back on TR Sports. Welcome back to TR Sports. It is now time to do the NBA mock draft. I was going to do a standalone episode for this, but I ultimately decided that it wasn't worth it and that I would just rather put it in the podcast as a segment. I didn't study the draft as much as I want to this year, so I'm not completely satisfied with how much I know. But I'm really busy this week, so I'm really trying to get this in here. So we're just going to do the top 10 picks. So we'll start out with the top 3 here. At the number 1 pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson out of Duke. This is not a surprise. Zion Williamson's the superstar in this year's draft. He's a lock of all locks. He averaged 22.6 points per game, 8.9 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game on 68% field goal percentage. Great player, very athletic, draws comparisons to guys like Sean Kemp, Charles Barkley. Some people say that Zion Williamson has to lose some weight to be really, really good at the next level. For his athleticism, it's just it's incredible, and he's like the most tracked rookie that I've seen since LeBron James. Like this, he's very. In my lifetime, I have not seen someone as hyped up as Zion Williamson. At number 2 pick, the Memphis Grizzlies select Ja Morant. He averaged 24.5 points per game, and the other impressive stat of Ja Morant is 10 assists per game. But the not so good stat is 36% from 3. Super athletic. He's a lot like Russell Westbrook. There are some people worried about Ja Morant shooting the 3 at the next level. But I feel like his passing ability, his athleticism, and his scoring is too good to pass up on at number 2. And he's a lock for number 2 pick. He can run the pick and roll really well, and he could really, really become a true superstar. And he was really, really good at a small school in Murray State on the college level. Okay, next up is R.J. Barrett out of Duke. R.J. averaged 22 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, only 4 assists, and a terrible 30% from 3. Again, he's a lock at this position with the Knicks. He had a great high school career. His godfather, Steve Nash, he comes up, RJ, and he has a good college career playing behind Zion. And he's a great scorer. People are worried about his three-point ability more than they are with Ja. But I think, again, he's too good of a scorer. He's got too many tools to be good at the next level, and is a really great knowledge of the game. So that is why RJ is going number 3. Number 4 is the Los Angeles Lakers. I forgot to mention, but we're not doing trades in this mock draft, so this pick's probably going to get traded. So I'm going to stay safe with this one. I'm going to say they take DeAndre Hunter, who I think is going to be a solid role player on the next level. Is he worth the number 4 pick, in my opinion? I don't think so. But I also think this is a really top-heavy draft where all the great guys, there's just top 3, and then everyone else is the same. He averaged 15.2 points per game, shooting 43% from 3. So those are his 2 eye-popping stats. And I mean, he's a great player. I think he was a great player on the college level. He could be a solid player on the next level, can shoot the 3. But there's nothing about him that really screams to me star. There's no one tool. There's no swagger. There's nothing like that with DeAndre Hunter. I just think he's going to be a solid role player who does his job well at the next level. Kind of reminds me of a guy like Cedi Osman, and if he maxes out, maybe he can even be a Kevin Love. But I'm not going to say that. I don't I don't really think that's going to happen. At number 5, we have Darius Garland going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's got 16.2 points per game on 47% from 3. I mean, he played a couple games in college, got injured. He could definitely be a great player, and if I'm the Cavs, I'm taking him here, even though I have Colin Sexton, because it's just he's got a lot of potential to be a guy like Ja Morant in college. He could have been Ja Morant in college if he did not get that injury. So he's declaring this year, and I feel like he will be a good player. But I don't know if this is the right pick for the Phoenix Suns because they finally need something good to go their way. And I don't know if that is this pick. At number 6, we have the oh my god! I just sorry, guys, I misspoke. Darius Garland's going to the Cavaliers. So the part about the Suns I just said, scratch that. Darius Garland is not going to go to the Suns. He's going to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers at 5, as I said. So now at number 6, we're going to do the Phoenix Suns, and I have them selecting Kobe White out of UNC. Again, none of his stats are eye-popping. 16 points per game, 35% field goal percentage. He was very entertaining to watch last season. He's a solid shooter. He's got the potential to develop a great 3-point shot. He can pass. I mean, he's a really raw prospect with a great upside. And whenever you're drafting in a draft that's super top heavy, and since you're the Phoenix Suns, you want to get a pick right. Kobe White is the guy in this draft, in my opinion. I feel like he should go number 4, even 5. And I meant to do a prospect breakdown on him, but I never got around to it. So that's number 6 to the Phoenix Suns. Number 7 to the Chicago Bulls. I have them taking Jackson Hayes out of Atlanta. Oh, I'm sorry. Out of Atlanta. Yeah, no. Out of Texas. You're like, wait, they have Wendell Carter Jr., but in my opinion, I feel like Jackson Hayes is a big gamble, and I think probably someone's going to approach the Chicago Bulls about trading. That's why I'm saying Jackson Hayes. The other guy I think they could take here is Jarrett Culver, but this is just who I think should be picked as well as what I think is going to happen. So I don't necessarily think all these things are going to happen, but I do think Jackson Hayes is a better player on the next level than a guy like Jarrett Culver would be. So that's why I have him going number 7 to the Chicago Bulls. At number 8, now we have Jarrett Culver. You got to pick him at some point. Even though I don't like him, and this is my mock draft, I think Jarrett Culver is going to be a bust on the next level. But if he falls this far, he won't be as big of a bust, of course, going to Atlanta at number 8. And I mean, we did a prospect breakdown. I don't know what else to say. Lengthy guy, has a high shot release, can get a shot over most defenders. Got to work on his decision makings. However, next at number 9, we have the Washington Wizards, and I have them taking Cameron Reddish. He's a great player. Could not show all of his potential and talent at college. He wasn't a great college player. He did not shoot well last year from 3-point range, even though that is his draw. He shot 33%, which is poor, which is worse than even guys like Zion Williamson, who are certainly not known for that ability. So I have Cameron Reddish going 9 to the Wizards, and he can definitely help that team out. And then finally, to end out the top 10 picks, I have Nasir Little going to the Atlanta Hawks. Everyone was high of him coming out of high school. Didn't have a great year at UNC at all. But it's just too much of a great talent to leave on the board and take a guy like Tyler Hero or Brandon Clark. I feel like sometimes you have to play risky with this stuff. So he did not have a good production year. He did not have a great year at UNC, but the Atlanta Hawks are going to be more than happy with getting Nasir Little at number 10. So I feel like he'll be a solid NBA player. So let me just restate my draft. Number 1, Zion Williamson to the Pelicans. Number 2, Ja Morant to the Grizzlies. Number 3, RJ Barrett to the Knicks. Number 4, DeAndre Hunter to the Lakers. Number 5, Darius Garland to the Cavs. Number 6, Kobe White to the Suns. Number 7, Jackson Hayes to the Chicago Bulls. Number 8, Jarrett Culver to the Atlanta Hawks. Number 9, Cam Reddish to the Washington Wizards. And finally, number 10, Nasir Little to the Atlanta Hawks. So that is the mock draft, and that also concludes the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm really busy, so I'm really trying to make this one really quick. I woke up really early to record this segment. I have finals next week, so I'm trying to study, but I still wanted to make a podcast for you. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and happy Father's Day this weekend. And I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye.